episodes on reality TV. And she's the author of 4 bestsellers, best-selling books, including her Fearless Living, which is how I found out about her. And she is the founder of the Fearless Living Institute. She's been named America's favorite life coach, and she brings neuroscience into the picture. And this idea, she helps you get over this idea of not being good enough, which is huge. And I'm sure when I say that, you know, everyone gets little chills or goosebumps thinking about it. She's got a really cool technology she uses called Wheels, and it came from saving her own life using this process. So, okay, Rhonda, I am so excited to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here as well, because what's more important than purpose, passion, and prosperity? Nothing.
So everyone can hear your energy, Rhonda. And I want to share a story of the first time that I met you. I was at a huge conference. You came out on the stage and everybody welcomed you. And this is what you said. You said, all right, that's it. She goes, that was horrible. I'm going to leave. And when I come back on stage, I want you to jump to your feet and I want you all to give me a great welcome.
Okay, it wasn't quite like that. It wasn't quite like that.
Are you serious? No. But it changed the entire...
Changed the energy of the room. Yeah.
But
yes, so I opened my keynote. I opened my keynotes with talking about how clapping tells me everything about you. And then I point out how they clap. And then I give them another shot.
Well, all I remember is that everyone did that. And then for the rest of the conference, every single person that came out got a standing ovation when they came out, which, you know, we all need that, because what I hear is even my husband's a professional musician with the Detroit Symphony Orchestra. And he said so many musicians, they end up, you know, getting sick, throwing up even before they go on stage, especially for solo performances. So it doesn't matter how famous you are, we all have this fear. And so I'm thrilled that you came here to talk to us about it today.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. And fear is at the heart. You know, we can call it procrastination. I always like to say, you know, so many people don't even know that they have fear. I know I was one of those people. If you would have told me before Fearless Living that I had fear, I'd be like, no, I don't. I mean, I grew up in Upper Michigan, Upper Minnesota, you know, we didn't feel, so having fear, what are you, crazy? So it was only when I started recognizing that all of the things that we do that we think are our problems, right? The procrastination, the overwhelm, the anxiety, the worry, you know, the guilt, the blame, the shame, the beating ourselves up, all of those things are truly just a function and a response to a deeper fear. So we wouldn't procrastinate if we didn't have a fear. We wouldn't get overwhelmed if we didn't have a fear, right? We wouldn't get anxious, and we wouldn't get overwhelmed. We wouldn't feel bad about ourselves. We wouldn't beat ourselves up. We wouldn't, you know, run from failure or run from success. So when I really got that fear is at the heart of all of the things that we think are our problems, it made life a lot simpler.
So you're saying fear is at the heart of most of our problems, or all of them?
I would say, you know, I'm not going to say that fear is at the heart of an illness necessarily, right? But when you're sitting here, when people are beating themselves up, right? So yes, we could go into that as well, correct?
I know.
We could do the body-mind connection, right? But,
yeah.
You know, think about all the things that people normally beat themselves up about, right? And in fact, I'll give a little quiz right now. So if the folks that are listening to us right now want to shut their eyes, I'll give them a little quiz, because again, just like myself, when I heard Fearless Living, I was like, yeah, Fearless Living is awesome. But when I remember, like, well, are you afraid? And I would always answer no, because I didn't understand how it was showing up in my life. I didn't see my problems in my life related to fear. It didn't even occur to me, because I didn't feel afraid, right? And I didn't use the words I'm scared or I'm afraid. I didn't use that language. Mm-hmm. So I didn't understand, you know, I didn't really identify with it. So that's kind of like the irony that I now, you know, talk about fear all day long. But I'd love to give a little quiz to help people that are listening right now determine how their fear may be showing up for them, to see if this conversation helps them relate, you know, it supports them. So everybody who's listening, go ahead, and if you're listening right now, go ahead and shut your eyes. And I'm going to read a list of words, And as I read this list of words, I want you to nod your head if you do any of these things or feel any of these things. So I want you to nod your head all the way down to your chest if you do any of these things or feel any of these things. Okay, everybody ready? Okay, be truthful, don't lie. Okay, do you ever isolate yourself? Do you ever pretend everything's okay when it's not? Do you ever hide out? Do you ever whine? How about settle? Compare? What about manipulate secretly? Do you ever get defensive? Judge? Do you ever complain? Procrastinate? Worry? Do you ever wait and call it patience? Do you ever blame? Struggle? Feel like you got to control things? Do you ever feel bitter? What about powerless? What about resentful? A little entitlement? Ever feel guilty? Disappointed? Do you ever feel irritated like now? Do you ever feel overwhelmed? Ignored? Ever feel self-pity? What about annoyed? Go ahead and open your eyes. And yes, Katana, what are you thinking about that?
Oh, I think, you know, I know men have fears too, but with women, it's so much more prevalent. And I was nodding, yes, yes, yes. And one of the huge ones is judgment. And so I'm actually in Deborah Poneman's program. She was just on last week. And one of the tasks we had this month is, mine was, I was not going to judge. And then if I judge someone, I would say cancel, right? And I would think of good things about that person. But the whole idea, for example, with judgment, it really does stem from fear, because the mind is a mirror. And what you don't like and then could be something that you're afraid of, right? In yourself.
That's right. So most people, when I give this list out, I don't care if I'm talking to an audience of 1,000 people or talking to a group of 20 in corporate America, it doesn't matter. On average, most people have anywhere between 80 to 100%. They nod their head. Yep. I very rarely, if any, ever get below 80%. Yeah. So these are the things that we beat ourselves up about. Like, oh God, I wish, like you said, I wish I wasn't so judgmental. I wish I was a horrible person for thinking that, and we beat ourselves up and put ourselves down for these things that we think, we think we have 10 problems. Well, I procrastinate, I judge, I compare, I'm competitive, right? Like we list all these problems. And then we think to ourselves, well, I'm just gonna I'm gonna work on my procrastination. Then I'm gonna work on my judgment. Then I'm gonna work on my, overwhelm. And then I'm gonna work on my anxiety, right? And we think they're separate issues, when in fact, they all stem from what I call the wheel of fear. They all stem from that core fear that each of us has that's individualized and personalized. Like your core fear is going to be different than mine. So everybody has a core fear based on their personal experience, based on their history, based on how they grew up. And also research is now showing that fears actually come through our DNA. So you may not have even had any experience that you can point to, right? Because people always say like, why am I like this? It's like, well, there may not be a why in this lifetime. So it might have been handed down from your great-great-grandfather. So spending a lot of time on why am I like this? Why am I like this? And trying to figure out the magical story, figure out the magical moment that you could, figure that out, and then everything would be, open and available. I think we're all old enough to know that you find one why, there's just another why behind it. So what I've discovered is that there's this fear that is really underlying, and it's like a plant. We have a root, which is fear. And then we have the different flowers popping up, procrastination, overwhelm, anxiety, etc., manipulation, control. And, as we get better, we go to procrastination school and go, I'm not going to procrastinate anymore, and then we go through the class and we're done. We don't do it anymore. We're amazing. We're so proud of ourselves. Fear doesn't care. Fear doesn't care if it's procrastination or overwhelm or judgment. It doesn't care what you do. It just wants to keep you safe. So it'll just pop up a new flower. It'll just pop up a new problem. I mean, I'm sure everybody can relate to the fact that you work so hard on, figuring out something, solving something. You think, I got it, I mastered it, I'm done. And then it pops up 3 years later. Mm-hmm.
So what about people who say, I'm not afraid of anything? I mean, is that true, or do they really believe it, or are they just in denial?
Well, that's what I thought. That's what I thought most of my life. I thought I wasn't afraid of anything. Mm-hmm. And yes, I would say that they're in denial.
Okay.
And they've been able to live their life this way. But the challenge is when I had a guy, actually, when I first wrote Fearless Living, I was on my book tour and I was in Atlanta, Georgia. And this guy walks into my book signing and he's like, hi. And I'm like, hello. And he's like, I came here to tell you I'm already fearless. I'm like, yay, yay, good for you. Getting in your car, driving over here to tell me that, right? And so I said, well, do you mind if I give you a little quiz? And he's like, go ahead. I'm like, great. I mean, this guy was like 6'2", 220, big guy, just like, I'm not afraid of anything. I'm like, okay, great. So awesome. So are you able to say I love you first? Do you have any resentments of past relationships? Have you forgiven your enemies? And I went down this list of emotional risks. And what I find is that people who brag and believe that they don't have any fear are talking about the fear of jumping off a plane or the fear of opening a business or the fear of, practical things. But really, when you start talking to them about the emotional risks that people have to take in order to give love and feel love, in order to have peace, etc. Well, they usually, that's when they go, oh crap. Oh, okay. And then that's where their fear shows up. So most people think of fear as jumping out of an airplane. Fear is actually jumping into life, right? Moving from any area of your life where you're surviving, moving into thriving. That takes courage. That takes vulnerability. That takes humility. That takes a willingness to be wrong about everything. And all of that helps us and supports us in facing our fears. But many of us don't even know, like you said just a minute ago, they don't even tie it to fear. They just think it's a character flaw in themselves, right? They think there's something wrong with them. I'm just not like that. I can't do that. That's not me, right? I don't know if I could ever do that, right? They blame themselves. They think it's a character flaw, and they don't understand that it's just fear whispering in their ear, telling them that that's not a good idea, because then you're going to have to grow, expand, and I can't keep you safe.
So I want to ask you this. I'm taking Marianne's course, Marianne Williamson. She's
Yes.
through the Course of Miracles, and I know you know all of this stuff too.
Well, Marianne, I studied with Marianne in 1980. 89, started in 1989. I used to go to Marianne Williamson's A Course in Miracles, twice a week. Did a study group, gone through the course I consider myself a Course in Miracles student. So yes, it's great. It's fantastic. So please.
Well, she's doing that. She's taking us through the whole course. Yeah, every morning. I know a whole bunch of people doing it. It's like $50. Yeah. It was such a great program. So I always get so excited when I learn this stuff. But I guess one of the basics is there's only two things: the fear and love.
That's right.
Right. And and then people, I know Barbara Houston, Barbara Stanny, formerly Barbara Stanny, she's also gone through the course. And then she talks about fear as ego and love as our soul. And I'm just very interested in your view on all of this and how does that relate to your work?
Yeah, people have told me that I've written in Fearless Living, my book Fearless Living. I remember when it first came out, people would say to me, "You've written the practical Course in Miracles," because sometimes Course in Miracles, for many people, Course in Miracles is difficult to read, challenging to the way that you see the world. And so I remember when I was going through the course, and like I said, I've studied the course for decades, and how do you do all that? And what does it mean to fear or love? Fear versus love. What does it mean, right? So I have a couple of things that I'd like to say. I'm not saying any of that is wrong. I'm like, yeah, you go, Barb. Yeah, you go, Marianne. Of course, Marianne's one of my mentors, one of my teachers. And this is where it caught me. So this is how I like to think about it. We all need a strong ego. And yes, there is the thing like, don't be egotistical, i.e. that you can say that's fear. But I actually think that's a short-sighted, for me personally, I think it's a short-sighted view of your ego, because we all need a healthy ego. So to lump ego as one thing, for me personally, doesn't work. Fear and love, of course, I agree with that. Yet this is the challenge. A lot of people actually don't know how to love from a sense of freedom, from fearlessness. Their love is actually based in fear. So if you don't know, so I say every value you hold, every belief you hold, every single one, every feeling you hold, either serves fear or freedom. So think about, I know, again, I did Course in Miracles for decades. And when I first started it, I would just practice being loving. I would just, I'd be loving, I'd be loving. And again, I want to be loving. Loving is actually my number one intention for the world, for myself and the world. And yet what I became is a people pleaser. What I became is I cut myself out of my own needs. I basically cut myself out because the goal for me back then was to be loving to others, right? I didn't know how to be loving to myself, and I didn't know how to love myself and love others at the same time. It felt like I had to choose. And because I didn't want to be ego driven, I would always choose others. And so I found myself kind of in a box. So do I think the Course in Miracles is brilliant? Of course I do. I love the Course in Miracles. Yet I think there's just a little switch in people's mind that many people don't talk about is, are you loving that fear and love? Are you loving from a place of fear or from a place of freedom? Are you loving with a goal and attachment to that love, an expectation of what's going to happen with that love? Or are you able to love with no expectations, no barriers, no struggles, etc.? And that's not necessarily easy for most people I know. Usually love creates an attachment to something, an expectation of something, right? So that's one of the great things about the Course in Miracles. It really teaches you how to detach. It really teaches you how to have no expectations. It really teaches you how to see the world as a blank slate, so to speak.
Yeah. So it's wonderful that you're doing this work, and there are so many powerful women like you doing this work out in the world. And it seems to be, tell me if you know, there seems to be a real shift happening on the planet, like majorly, a major shift of love and goodness. And I noticed, I jumped on Clubhouse, for example. I got an invitation, and it just happened that the class that was going on was Law of Attraction, Manifesting Your Desires. 1,400 people. They said it was the largest room going, and there was a lot of men on it and highly successful people. To me, I mean, there's one thing, The Secret came out, and, the Law of Attraction's been around for so many years. I mean,
for centuries. For
centuries, yes. But there's something going on right now where your message and this type of message is like mainstream. What do you think's happening here? And how does that relate to the work you're doing?
Well, I think that the world is getting more awake, right? I mean, getting more conscious. They're realizing that how they've seen things, how things have worked in the past doesn't work anymore. I mean, for instance, Black Lives Matter. I remember watching this video from one of the Black Lives Matter people, and it was so powerful. I just got chills. And, just saying, just her personal, open-hearted light about Black Lives Matter, and she is an African-American, and the impact that being Black has had on her. It was just so riveting, eye-opening, heart-opening. And I think that everything going on in the world today, politically, etc., is giving us an opportunity to face what we believe. If we're really, we have to be under a rock if we're not knowing what's happening out in the world right now. And you really have to face what you believe. And sadly, some people are almost closing off instead of opening up. And that's how some people are responding. My sister's actually doing that right now. One of my sisters I find she thinks she's opening up, but based on her language and how she's showing up, she's getting closed, right? And so that also breaks my heart. Like, so some people are in this moment in history, and it takes great courage. It takes extreme vulnerability. It takes a willingness to be wrong in order to shift your life, to shift and expand. That's what it needs. You can't just expand your mind, expand your heart without confronting the things that have been your past beliefs, or the things that you thought before, right? Your thoughts, your beliefs, etc. So it's a time of, I don't want to say the word confrontation, but for the lack of a better word, confrontation, which in fearless living language is, if you feel like confronting, it's really a craving for connection. So we're all just trying to find a way to connect, and we're coming from very different, quote unquote, human realities. And can we find the thread of truth for all of us? And can we build on that thread of truth? So I think this is an amazing time. I sometimes spend hours thinking about how can we make an even bigger impact? How can we How can we shift it faster? You know, how can we wake people up even more, right? And it's an incredible time to be alive.
It really is. And, you know, I work with women in midlife, and they're all looking for their purpose and how do I do something in my second act and all that. But then I see the young people, and I am in awe of the young people. These millennials, they're 25, 35 years old. They're amazing. My daughters are millennials, and they are quick. And sometimes
Yes.
I listened to a young gal on a podcast with another millennial. I didn't even know what they were talking about. And then I went into fear, and I thought I wanted to interview her, but I actually felt, insecure, like the fear thing
Sure.
came up instead of going, wow, let's do it and go for it, because she talks so fast and she seemed fearless. Okay, Rhonda, that's where I'm getting with this. She just seemed so fearless, like nothing fazed her. And she even said she took this job and she didn't even know how to do it, but she figured she could figure it out on the internet when she got the job.
Yeah. Well, think about the younger people, they have things that we never had, right? We didn't have the internet, we didn't have cell phones. I mean, they have so much more available to them. And that comes up with another issue, which is there's an incredible experience of loneliness among the millennials and the younger folks who are, attached to their phone. There's an epidemic of loneliness, an epidemic of disconnection, even though they're connected. So, every growth opportunity has that quote unquote shadow side, has okay, wait a minute, I've got to be able to explore this fully and completely rather than just take a little bit of it, go with it. And then you and I both know that eventually the shadow catches up with you. Eventually that fear side catches up with you because it has to be addressed or that part's going to keep you in that box, right? So, we all live in a box that we have created, i.e. or been created for us, and we stepped in and we're still in it. And in order to step out of that box, it takes, like I said, a huge vulnerability, a huge willingness to be willing to be wrong about everything. If you're not willing to be wrong about everything, then you're not really willing to see the truth. If you're attached to something being a certain way, then you can't see the truth because you'll always filter the world and what you hear and what you see through what you're willing to accept. So are you willing to be wrong?
Take that first step, because one of the things I run into is people not feeling good enough, but being afraid to shine their light, and this idea of vulnerability and getting out there and, being authentic. And they're so afraid that they never get to really shine. What does that do? And what do you suggest for someone? How do they get past that?
Yeah, well, first of all, people always ask me, well, Rhonda, what's my wheel of fear? What's my wheel of fear? And, people will say to me, oh, I know mine. It's not good enough. Well, not good enough is the generic version of the wheel of fear. So all of us generically, if we just, like had peanut butter rather than Jifs, right? Or, tissue instead of Kleenex, right? It's just the generic. It's just, I'm not good enough. Again, I know how it feels. It feels raw. It feels really true. I hear you. And there's actually a personalized version, an individualized version of not good enough that is more unique, more, more stab in the throat, more stab in the heart than not good enough. So first of all, just to start separating yourself from not good enough, that not good enough is something that is there really, truly to keep you safe. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the brain. The brain is where, our neurobiology, fear lives within us, right? Fear is part and parcel of who we are. You can't get rid of it. So when people say, I have no fear, I say, okay, did you have a lobotomy? Because that's pretty much the only way you're going to get rid of fear. So, so we want to think about how the brain works. What does the brain do? The brain, let's just think of, we have energy. We have a certain level of energy every day. And let's call it 100 units of energy. Okay, let's just say that. 100 units of energy every day. And if we are on automatic pilot, which by the way, our brain is trained to be on automatic pilot, so it conserves energy. So that's why we judge, by the way. We judge because that is how the brain is wired, so it doesn't use energy. It is a technique. It is how we're wired to basically go, oh, that person there, that person there, that person there, that person there, that person there. So I don't have to think about it. I don't have to get to know each person. I don't have to discover each person. I don't have to figure out each person. I can just lump them in boxes and it saves me energy. It saves me energy. So we only have 100 units of energy, let's say a day. And every time we make a decision, that takes energy. Anytime we try something new, we need more energy, okay? So how the brain works is it goes, well, I need to conserve energy. I need to conserve energy at all costs because I got to keep Rhonda alive. I got to keep Katana alive, right? I got to keep them alive. So I've got to conserve this energy. So I'm going to, just judging is again, a conservation tool. And the other thing the brain does is a problem in the present. So I have a problem right now, today, in the present. The brain is wired to look in the past for a template, look in the past for a template to apply to the present moment. And this is why we keep repeating past experiences, because literally our brain is wired to go into the past to get a template to apply to the present problem to create a different future. And you and I are smart enough to know that doesn't work. But that's how the brain is wired.
Wow.
Okay.
That makes
so
sense.
right. So if we know that the brain is wired that way, and the brain is wired to conserve our energy, and the brain is wired to keep us safe. And oh, by the way, the brain doesn't know the difference between our imagination and reality, doesn't know the difference. That's why law of attraction, it works in some cases it doesn't, right? The law of attraction is a technique, but it has faults, right? So the law of attraction, everything. So the brain doesn't know the difference between something we imagine and something that's real. Mm-hmm. So if you walk into a party and say, these people aren't my people, the brain goes, oh, I guess these people aren't my people. I guess the people are my people. So it actually acts on that, believing that's true. So the brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. The brain looks in the past for a solution because that's its template. And the other thing that the brain does, and this is how fear works, is it wants you to keep repeating the past because it knows if you repeat the past, it can keep you alive. It doesn't know if you make a new decision, and try something new, the brain, i.e. ignites fear and goes, she's about to do something that we have no idea if it's going to work. And we don't know if she's going to stay alive emotionally, physically, etc. So we've got to shut her down. We've got to make her have doubt. We've got to make her worry. We've got to make her feel anxious because she has got to stay in line because we've got to keep her safe.
And thus the physical.
Right. So I always say that, your ability to be free, actually equals your ability to live in the unknown. If you have to know, that is not freedom. Because you're actually not, if you have to know, then the brain that has to know, that's driven by fear, actually is running that decision, that life. So your capacity to live in the unknown and not know what's going to happen and be able to walk in there vulnerably, courageously, fearlessly, and start using your energy differently is when true change happens.
But that's so easy to say, but
yeah,
but very, very scary to do.
It's very scary to do, but that's exactly why I created the wheels, Katana. This is exactly the reason, because once you understand, for me personally, and my students and my clients, once you understand how the wheel of fear works, just like the wheel, just
so
like the Course in Miracles.
Wheel of Fear, because everyone here is newbie unless they've been through it.
Okay, sure. Yeah, absolutely. So the Wheel of Fear, just to give you a brief, because there's the Wheel of Fear and the Wheel of Freedom. The Wheel of Fear has 4 components. And, the first component is your trigger, what triggers you. And that trigger is what we call the core fear. It moves you into fear responses, right? It's fear responses, procrastination, overwhelm, all the things that you do that you hate about yourself, that you wish you didn't do, the procrastination, the overwhelm, etc. Oh, the self-doubt, the negative self-talk, the beating yourself up, the judging, all of those are simply fear responses. They're just fear responses. That's all they are. And then if you continue to do those fear responses, if you continue to judge, beat yourself up, etc., you will eventually hit the number 3rd, which is the core negative feeling. And that's why we've all experienced the core negative feeling. My core negative feeling is worthless. So if I, try my best and do everything I think is right, I will end up eventually someday lying in bed, just asking myself, God, I'm so worthless, like feeling that dreaded feeling of worthlessness. And that's one of the things, we don't want to feel our core feeling. We don't want to feel worthless. We don't want to feel unlovable, right? We don't want to feel that. So we do those fear responses to stop that as well. And so then when we get to that core negative, and I'll show you a picture, hold a second, for those of us who are watching.
Rhonda, which book are you reading right now?
Oh, Fearless Living. Fearless Living.
Because I saw Rhonda Britten, your picture there. Oh, because that is such a great book.
Yeah, thank you. So, so it goes from the trigger. Let me see if I can do this here. It goes from the trigger, right? Trigger to fear responses to the core negative feeling, and it's self-destructive. So what's self-destructive? Self-destructive is, you know, one of my coaches said that eating a dessert, a little treat, is 2 cookies. A fear response is 6 cookies. And when you're self-destructive, you're eating the whole bag.
Okay.
Right? Right? So self-destructive might be sleeping too much, sleeping too little, exercising too much, drinking, you know, getting drunk, suicidal, et cetera, all those things. And then when we're self-destructive, we go, oh my God, my life sucks. I've got to try harder. And then we get back on the wheel. We get back on the wheel, right? We get back on the wheel of fear, right?
Yes.
So we want to, once you understand how the wheel works and how it works, more importantly for you personally, because again, you're going to have your own trigger, your core negative and your own trigger. Once you see it plain as day, just like the Course in Miracles, plain as day, fear or love, you see this plain as day, you start recognizing, oh, this isn't me. This isn't who I am at my core. This isn't my essential nature. This isn't who I am. This is a mechanism that is created to keep me safe. Oh, it has nothing to do with me. That is not who I am, right? So once you start seeing that, what happens, what's really cool to Katana is when people discover their will, the first thing they usually out of their mouth comes, now I know why I did everything in my life. I know why I got married, divorced, went to school, quit school, you know, get all their decisions. Yeah. They see it. So they see how it was a fear response. They see how it was a response to their fear, right? They see it. And then we introduce them to their wheel of freedom, which is of course the antidote to the wheel of fear. And once you see them as just the way your neurobiology is wired, it's not personal. I know it feels personal, but it's not personal. Then you can get that, that space between you and it to give yourself permission to make different choices, because now you know what's going on. It's not a secret anymore, right? It's not like, what's wrong with me? It's not a personal, you feeling like what's wrong with me. You're taking fear personally, and it is not personal.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty powerful. So you can look at it without all the emotion and right, the self-judgment around it, because I think that's the big, we're the biggest critic of ourselves.
Yes, but and I would even say, because yes, and I would say the wheel of fear is the biggest critic of ourselves. Right? You in your true nature, right? You in your true nature. Like, think about when you were born, you know, think of you and yourself in your true nature. If you were your truth, if you lived your essential nature, if you were living from that place, would you choose to beat yourself up? No, of course not. So when we're beating ourselves up, it's just a fear response. It's not you beating you up, even though I know it feels that way, you know. It's that mechanism coming up and saying, well, I got to shut her down because she's about to take a risk and I can't keep her safe, right? And this is, you know, where needs come in, feelings come in, beliefs come in, thoughts come in, all of these things come in. So once we start kind of putting them in their categories and start seeing how they play out, we have a lot more choice. We have a lot more choice. And the other thing that people experience when they discover their wheel of fear is that the shame of their past, they're able to forgive, they're able to let go. They can release the shame of the decisions in their life that they're embarrassed by or humiliated by or feel like they have to beat themselves up for, and, you know, cost them permission to shine.
Rhonda, your work is so powerful. I'm going to tell everyone, I went to Fearless Living in New York City years and years ago. And it was Memorial Day weekend, and you worked us to death, let me tell you. and I remember doing my drawing. And I still, to this day, when I look at that, you know, my girls were little, and I remember I was so hard on myself for it. And, you know, going through that, and in my before and after drawings were totally amazing. But that shame, I was able to release it.
Yeah.
With my, you know, about, just anyway, I don't want to go into it.
Yeah, no, I mean, no, I love it because
powerful.
Yeah, shame is shame keeps us in the box. You know, I'm ashamed of my past behavior. I'm ashamed of my mistakes. I'm ashamed of what I said. I'm ashamed of what I thought. I'm ashamed that I had that judgment. I'm ashamed that I, thought that, I felt that, I did that. So that shame, kind of creates a box for us. And we live inside that shame. And the challenge is the shame actually takes away our permission, takes away our rights, takes away our yeses. It takes away our future. And so it takes away our possibilities, because now we'll only give ourselves permission. You talked earlier about willing to shine,
our light. I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah.
And then what happens to us when we come home? Let's say we go through the experience and then we come home, and then, there's still those people around us who are still holding that over our head. How,
Well, first of all, they can only hold it over your head if you agree with it, right?
Yeah.
Right. So if anybody can say anything, and anybody can ask anything, and anybody can, tell anything, and anybody can try to make you feel guilty, but you're the one that has to take that on or not. And you're the one that has to decide to put a boundary up. You're the one that has to go, not true about me. No, thank you very much. I know that you think that, and that's not true. Right. So you're the one that has to be in charge of your reality. You're the one that has to be in charge of your own feelings and thoughts. And so anybody can try to make you feel guilty. Anybody can, judge you. Anybody can, the world is filled with fearful people. So they're going to do that to try to control you. It's a control mechanism. It's a manipulation, right? So they're trying to control you, because if you change, then they have to look at themselves differently, right? And they want that. If you stay the same, they get to be in their bad behavior. But if you change, then their bad behavior becomes very evident, becomes way more evident, because you're no longer placating it, dealing with it, apologizing for it. It's like, no, that's them. This is me. I'm separate. I'm a separate human being. I have sovereignty over myself. And by the way, they have sovereignty over themselves, and they're choosing to do that. That is not about me. And so we create, say that again?
No, as I said, so what happens when that person, comes back and they're renewed and they feel so comfortable with themselves now and joyful, and then something happens and then that comes back. So
well, it's the wheel of fear.
Go ahead.
The wheel of fear is always going to be with you. So, one of the things that we believe in fearless living is no one can be fearless alone. That's why we are very community driven. We need each other to remind each other of the truth. It's why we certify coaches. It's why coaches work with our clients. It's why we have a membership, Fearless You membership, so that you're getting reinforced and supported. And why we believe we show you and educate you about who's a fear buster and who's a fear junkie, so you can identify those people, right? Because people are like, yes, but they love me, but then they do this. It's like, yeah, let's identify fear junkie behavior and fear buster behavior, so you can more easily identify the people in your life. So you can see, okay, in finances, they're a fear junkie, but in love, they're a fear buster, right? So, okay, so what about only talking to them for right now, only about the way that they're a fear buster for you, right?
So explain that. That's interesting.
Yeah, so we have something called Fear Busters and Fear Junkies, and we help people understand how to build a support team. Because sadly, you and I know that people do not have enough support in this world. They just don't have enough support. And when we do our Fearless Living training program, when we're inside Fearless You, in our membership, people will say like, well, I have one friend, or I have no really good friends, or my friends, my best friend died, or we moved, right? So there's this lack of support. There's a lack of support and a lack of true acceptance. Just really accepting a human being for all of themselves, just accepting them, right? And seeing who they truly are, and talking to that person who is the truth of who they are. So what we do is, many people have, like a best friend or a really good friend that is a fear buster and a fear junkie. So maybe when it comes to work, right? When it comes to work, they're powerful, they're amazing, they're great, they're a fear buster. You can talk about work and they're like supportive and helpful. But then when it comes to love, they're fear junkies because they've been heartbroken. They don't trust people, so they go, oh yeah, I don't know about doing that. I don't like online dating. You shouldn't do that. Like they can't get past their own fears. They put their fears onto you.
Right.
And if you don't see that and can't see that, it feels real. It feels true. It feels like they love you. And it's the way they're trying to love you. But they're being a fear junkie right now. And so, okay, got it. They're putting their worldview, their fears, and trying to put it onto you. And for most of our lives, we've accepted that because that's been love, right? That's been love. And so now we get to have, because now we understand how the wheel of fear and wheel of freedom works. One of the great benefits of it is not only do you see it in yourself, but you see it in everybody else. So you start seeing it in your kids, you start seeing it in your friends, you start seeing it in your parents, you start seeing it in your coworkers, your boss. So now you don't take things personally. You know, it's like you really start seeing where you end, where you end and they begin. And you can start detangling yourself from other people's expectations or who they think you should be, and starting to really define and decide who you are, who you are and who you were born to be. Our motto in Fearless Living is live the life your soul intended. And, that's my love. That's my job. That's my opportunity. That's my passion, is to support people to live the life their soul intended. Right? It's not a logical decision. It's a soul intention. Right? So, when you are connected to that soul intention and you understand how fear works, you gain more courage. And then when you have more support, you have more courage. One of my coaches, we were teaching a class this weekend, and she was talking about support, and she said she was a minister's wife. So she ran a church with her husband. And she said, I thought I had support. She goes, but I never really had support. She goes, coming to Fearless Living, I have never felt so accepted and so supported. And she goes, and I never knew what was capable for me. I never knew what I was capable of with support.
So
and her life.
What did she think the support was before that was not really support in her mind? I'm just curious. She thought she was supported, and so what was the change, like the before and after? I'm just curious for people listening. And herself.
Yeah. So support for many people is, of course, we want somebody to be there for us during the tough times. That support. And I think for her, support previously felt like she still had to live up to other people's expectations. She still had to, in order to get that support, she had to belong to the group, right? She had to fit in some way. She had to, cut off her arm if she wanted to belong, right? She had to cut off some part of herself or compromise some part of herself in order to belong to the family, or in order to belong to the church, or in order to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what Fearless Living gives you is you don't have to cut off parts of yourself. You can be your full self. You can truly be all of you. And without shame, without blame, you don't have to change for me, so to speak. And yes, do people need skills to communicate? Yes. Do people need toolboxes to know how to manage certain challenges in their life? Of course they do. You need skills, you need tools, you need awareness, you need to understand how fear works, because then when you have that, and a support team, when you have a support team that really gets that when you do something you're embarrassed by, you're ashamed of, that you wish you hadn't done, they're not judging you. They go, oh yeah, you were just afraid. That's okay. Totally get it. Like there's no character defect. There's no character flaw. There's no shame added, or, the blame isn't piled on, there's no why didn't you do that better?
Well, and I'm thinking that the support after someone has a breakthrough, the support is so important, because you come back now and now you're this new person that feels free, but no one else knows you. They're like, wait, that's not who you are. Wait, we don't know that person, right? And they try to shove you, push you back, dim it down a bit. Is this true? And you either give in, or is there a way to transform them, or just say, hey, it is what it is, and show
it's a little bit of all of that, right? Because some people are going to respond and positively, and some people are going to try to keep you down, and some people are going to just be like, whatever, based on the other person's ability to be free, right? So it's all of that. It's one of the reasons why in our workshops and our classes that we talk about those fear busters and fear junkies, so that we do know. And then we talk about communication. We talk about prep sentences. I've created something called prep sentences, and different ways to communicate the things that you need to communicate to somebody who doesn't get you right now. It doesn't I don't know about you right now. You're being different, right? But how do you communicate to that person? So we all need to improve our, as we call it, fearless conversation skills, right? We all need to be more fearless in our ability to communicate. We all need to be able to have that difficult conversation. We all need to be able to put a boundary up. And that is easier said than done. Most people have a very difficult time with boundaries because they feel mean, right? I feel so mean when I do that. I feel so judgmental. It's like, okay, let's figure out, is it being judgmental? Is it being mean? Or is it that you're simply putting a boundary up because you don't feel safe? Right?
So when you talk about boundaries, now I'm thinking about, oh my goodness, when people go through this kind of training, what kind of parents they, not just, you know, a relationship with a spouse or a boss, but with your children, because no one teaches us these things. We do our best, but you know, we're struggling. We don't really know what's going on. And then when we have these children that are growing up, wow. So have you heard stories about people going to fearless living, going home, and then what happens with their relationship with their children?
Many. I mean, there are many people that actually come to fearless living for their children because they want to be better parents, you know, and they're like, I mean, I'm thinking of Kelly. She has 8 kids, right? And she came to fearless living because she wanted to be a better mom.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, we can all imagine what it's like to have 8 kids. I think we all can just imagine for a second how stressful that must be, how overwhelming that could be, how, you know, just the level of awakeness that you have to have in order to be, to handle that amount of, you know, shifting and changing throughout the day with 8 kids and, you know, and a husband, and I think, you know, dog, right? Like a lot is going on. So, yeah, so she had a son who was in his teens when she came, and they had a very turbulent relationship, a very combative relationship. And she always felt like, you know, she had to be kind of tough on him and almost mean for him to, you know, kind of fall in line. And she hated it. Well, this just warms my heart so much. And this is just one story. There's so many. Their relationship has fundamentally shifted. And more important, what's really the beautiful part is that because she talks fearless living, he has now picked that up. And he uses the same language she does now. Just from her use of it, he now uses it. So when they're having a disagreement, when they're having a challenge, both of them, the mom and the son, are able to use the questions inside fearless living, the tools of fearless living, and actually get through it together. And, you know, he has blossomed, you know, and she's always been worried about him. You know, she's always been like, oh, he's my problem child. It's like, yeah, but he's not actually a problem child. He's just really, really, really afraid. And how can you see him differently? And how can you speak to him differently? And how can you speak to his will of freedom? So their relationship is completely altered. I was talking about my coach and her being a minister's wife. She has grown children when she came to fearless living, and they were just having some outs, right? One of the sons wasn't talking to her, you know, they're just having some difficulty as adult children. And they now, I mean, she just told me this the other day, it just warmed my heart. I mean, they are closer than ever. You know, they're closer than ever. And remember, the son didn't go to my workshop. Kelly's son didn't go to my workshop,
really?
Right? Yeah, so they didn't go to the workshop. Only the mothers did. The mothers came to the workshop and the sons shifted just because the mothers shifted, right?
Yes. So in the way, so I'm curious, is there a fearless living program for the children yet?
We actually have a couple coaches. One of my coaches, Alice, actually, she's up in northern New York State, and she actually goes into the elementary schools and junior high and teaches fearless living.
Oh my God. See, that brings tears to my eyes to think, imagine learning this, because the parents don't know it. And then if the children, because that's how you can transform the world, is teach the children how to do this. That's wonderful, Rhonda.
I actually went to, I think it was like a 6th grade class when I was out in New York a couple of years ago. And I went to the class. I actually went to the class. And so I was able to see how she made the work palatable and applicable to a group of 6th graders, 7th graders. It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
That's really wonderful. So I would, you know, we still have, you know, maybe 4 minutes left at the end. We're at the end of the show. I really would love for you to tell people how they can learn about your community and engage with your programs. And Also, which book is it that tells your story? Because that's how I learned about you. I read the story about your childhood and what that horrific, event. And so many people have gone through pain, but yours was pretty amazing. So.
Yeah, thank you. And just for those that are listening that are like, what are you talking about? I'll just tell the short version of it. I'll tell the very, very short version. So hang on to your seat because I'm about to say something that might be like, what? But what Katana is referring to is when I was 14 years old, my parents were getting a divorce, and my father came over to take us out for Father's Day. And instead of taking us out for Father's Day, he pulled out a gun, shot my mother twice, and then shot himself. So in a matter of 2 minutes, I was the sole witness to my father murdering my mother and committing suicide. And, when that happened, I always say that day I split into two, right? I split into two, the person that I was like, fine, I'm fine. No, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. And then the person underneath that was like, oh my God, this is all my fault, right? The shame and the guilt, because I was the only one physically there that could have stopped it, because I was the only one there with them when he pulled out the gun. My other sisters were in the bathroom and were in the bathroom, didn't see it, didn't know it was happening. So, I blamed myself because, I didn't save my mother. I didn't grab the gun. I didn't kick my father, right? I did nothing heroic. So, for 20 years, I tried to kill myself 3 times. I became an alcoholic, got 3 DUIs. And it was that third suicide attempt I realized I'm not good at killing myself, and I better figure this out. Now, mind you, during those 20 years, I also read self-help books and went to church and went to Course in Miracles, did a lot of things during those 20 years. But it wasn't until I really figured out this fear thing that I was able to set myself free. It was like a missing puzzle for me. Course in Miracles, obviously, I love it. Psychology, love it. Therapy, love it. Trauma work, love it. All of that stuff, love it. But this was like the piece that put it all together for me. Without this piece, I still kept feeling not good enough. I still kept having this nagging feeling. So how you can find out more about me is at fearlessliving.org, fearlessliving.org. And I encourage everyone, if you're wondering what your next step is, become a member of Fearless You, Fearless YOU, Fearless YOU. And that is our membership that I teach every month in there, many times, a couple times at least. And then we have 6 faculty, we have ambassadors, you will feel so loved up in that community. So fearlessyou.com. fearlessyou.com. And you can go check out our membership and think about joining, jump in. I really invite you to. And I would love to give a little class for folks if they want a taste of an exercise I call Stretch, Risk, and Die that will help them understand how fear works. It's me teaching in front of a company. And you go to fearlessliving.org/risk, fearlessliving.org/risk. And I know I gave you so many URLs there. So fearlessliving.org.
We'll put them on the Facebook. Smart Women.
Okay, perfect. Perfect.
On the Facebook. Perfect. We'll put all of it there.
Perfect. That is the best way. fearlessliving.org/risk. Go grab a free class. And Fearless YOU is our membership, and become a member of Fearless Living. I know it will transform your life. And
also, a lot of this is in your book, Fearless Living.
Yep. If you're a reader, grab Fearless You and go to Audible and listen to it on audio.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I've got 3 credits. Perfect. Okay. I just love I love Audible so much. Yeah. Now, one question, when in the Audible version, is it you speaking?
Yes, it is. I read all my books.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay. Well, Rhonda, I'm going to catch you there. So it's been so wonderful having you here. And it's so nice to actually connect with you. Do you have any idea how many years ago that was that I came to?
Yeah, I think it was, I want to say like 16 years ago, 17 years ago, maybe even 18, because I was on Starting Over during that time. So it had to be 2003, 2004, 2005, 6, something like that. So maybe 15, 16 years ago.
Yeah, and I had bought a pair of pants while we were there, and I saved them all those years. I finally gave them away. I had gotten heavy, and then I got thin, and they fit, but I thought they're out of style, although they're pretty darn cute.
Yeah, I remember I got stuck in the elevator. and we were. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's really great. Thank you for being here. And everyone, thanks for coming to Smart Women Talk. And until next time, go out and live with more purpose, passion, and prosperity.